Hello everyone, I'm Anas Al-Ubaidi and this is lecture 15, session 15 within chapter 24 of the Advanced Medical Science Liaison and Medical Monitor Certification course program by CCRPS. The chapter is about conceptual and theoretical monitoring, while the topic for the session is about monitoring of drug sensation and drug-thought interaction trials. Introduction. Drugs that influence sensory perception and cognitive processes require rigorous evaluation to ensure safety, efficacy, and optimal therapeutic outcomes. Drug sensation interaction trials focus on how drugs affect sensory responses such as changes in touch, taste, vision, or pain perception. Meanwhile, drug thought interaction trials assess cognition related impacts, including attention, memory, reaction time, and decision making processes. Both types of trials play a pivotal role in the development of treatments targeting the central nervous system, CNS, and sensory functions. Key points: sensory data accuracy, importance. Accurately tracking sensory changes such as alterations in pain perception or visual clarity is vital for understanding a drug's effects on sensory systems. Methods for tracking sensory data: standardized sensory testing, employ tests like visual acuity exams or pressure thresholds evaluations to detect sensory changes systematically. And this is a summarized diagram on analyzing sensory data accuracy challenges, as here we have challenges in ensuring sensory data accuracy, methods for tracking sensory data, data interpretation challenges, and baseline sensory variability. Example of standardized sensory testing: a neuropathy drug trial incorporated electronic pain threshold devices to measure consistency in sensory responses across diverse patient groups. Objective measurements use tools such as thermal sensitivity analyzers or EEG, electroencephalogram, for neural response monitoring to ensure reliable data collection, as for example, a local anesthetic trial used a temperature controlled probe to assess sensory thresholds pre and post administration. Challenges: baseline sensory variability among participants, as for example, age, comorbid conditions, can complicate data interpretation. This requires careful stratification and adjustments. Cognitive assessment consistency, importance, ensuring reproducible and unbiased cognitive outcomes is essential, particularly for drugs that may affect memory, focus, or decision making. Here is a summarized diagram on ensuring consistent cognitive assessments. As here we have external factors, testing conditions, assessment techniques, and biases. And in external factors, we have stress fatigue, testing conditions, control conditions, environmental variables, assessment techniques, software-based testing, standardized tool, here experimental bias, unconscious bias under biases, all lead toward inconsistent cognitive assessment outcome. Techniques for cognitive assessment. Standardized tools use recognized tests such as the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, MOCA, MOCA, or Mini Mental State Examination, MMSE, for consistent cognitive evaluations. Example, a sleep aid study employed the MOCA, MOCA, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, to detect subtle impairments in cognitive function during waking hours. Software-based testing digital platforms allow for precise measurements of reaction times, problem-solving abilities, and memory recall. Example, a cognitive enhancer trial utilized computer-based reaction time tasks to identify slowed processing speeds caused by fatigue. Challenges here: external factors like stress, fatigue, or anxiety can bias cognitive performance, underscoring the need for testing under controlled conditions. Regulatory compliance importance. Regulators such as the FDA and EMA require thorough evaluations of sensory and cognitive side effects to meet safety and ethical standards for CNS targeting drugs. Here is a summarized diagram on navigating regulatory compliance for CNS drugs. As here we have adverse event tracking, standardized testing, systematic reporting, global standards discrepancies, tailored approaches, multinational trials, cognitive endpoint submission, validated methods, protocol alignment, all toward ensuring regulatory compliance for CNS drugs. Requirements here for regulatory compliance. Adverse event tracking. Trials must report sensory and cognitive side effects, as for instance, for example, dizziness, blurred vision, hallucinations systematically. Example, a sedative trial reported psychomotor impairments using standardized vigilance testing while fulfilling regulatory mandates. Cognitive endpoint submission. Cognitive endpoints must align with the pre-approved study protocols and be recorded using validated methods. As for example, for instance, a memory function study for an anti-dementia drug incorporated detailed psychometric evaluations and regulatory submissions. Challenges here: global discrepancies in standards for CNS central nervous system drug evaluation require tailored approaches for multinational trials. Steps to effective monitoring. Step 1, planning. Define key endpoints. Example outcomes include changes in memory recall, reaction time, or tactile sensitivity. As for example, a trial of antidepressants included monitoring of both emotional processing and sensory clarity to identify unexpected CNS central nervous system effects. Develop protocols, standardize testing frequency and methods to reduce intersite variability. After planning, we have execution, tailored testing to specific populations, as for example, pediatric or geriatric, for sensitivity and appropriateness. Train investigators to administer diagnostic tools uniformly across all trial sites. Example, a diabetic neuropathy trial employ thermal sensitivity testers daily to track minute changes in sensory responses or in sensory response. Step 3, data review. Analyze deviations from predefined endpoints. Example, a neurological drug trial flagged unexpected cognitive decline in a subset of participants, prompting further investigation. Identify inconsistencies to uphold data integrity, as for example, a pain relief study detected underreporting of sensations at certain sites due to cultural factors, highlighting the need for retraining. After data review, planning, execution, data review, then step 4, reporting. Summarize findings objectively, detailing both benefits and risks with subgroup analysis based on age, sex, or comorbidities. As for example, a CNS, a central nervous system drug trial, noted that sensory side effects, as for instance tingling, were more pronounced in older participants, prompting dosage adjustments. Tools and techniques for monitoring. Sensory evaluation devices. These include calibrated instruments like vibration analyzers or thermal probes to monitor changes in sensory response. As for example, a migraine trial used electronic pain threshold devices for consistent sensory assessments. Cognitive testing platforms, digital neuropsychological assessment tools measure metrics like memory, attention, and reaction speed. As for example, a study on ADHD treatments used cognitive testing software to track changes in focus and decision making. Patient reported outcome. PRO tools. Participants can self report side effects like sensory discomfort or cognitive clouding using mobile apps or digital diaries. As for example, a stimulant trial relied on patient reported sensations of heightened alertness for comprehensive feedback. Functional imaging techniques such as fMRI or PET scans reveal drug induced changes in brain activity. As for example, a dementia drug trial utilized fMRI to demonstrate improved neural connectivity during memory tasks. Data visualization software, advanced platforms simplify complex datasets, identifying patterns or anomalies in sensory and cognitive metrics. As for example, a pain management trial used visualization dashboards to track declining reaction times in younger participants. Examples of successful monitoring in clinical studies: neuropathy drug trial challenge difficulty identifying nerve damage progression, solution resolution for that combined thermal sensitivity testing with imaging to enhance accuracy. Here's a diagram summarizing clinical study monitoring solutions as pain management, improved sensory evaluation resolution, neuropathy trial, enhanced accuracy in nerve damage assessment, cognitive study objective validation of cognitive improvements, sedative evaluation reduced dizziness through dosing adjustments. Cognitive enhancer study challenge subjective overestimations of cognition improvement, solution resolution for that, introduced computer-based validation tools for objective monitoring. Sedative evaluation study challenge high rates of dizziness among participants, solution resolution for that, modified dose schedules to reduce adverse effects. Pain management trials challenge failure to capture sensory impairments accurately, solution or resolution for that, increased resolution during sensory evaluations. Next, we will look through tables that which will summarize what we have covered through this lecture. Table on key differences between drug sensation drug thought interaction trials. Aspect: drug sensation interaction and drug thought interaction. As here an aspect we have definition, as in drug sensation interaction we have examines sensory effects, for instance touch, vision, taste, while in drug thought interaction explores cognitive impacts, as for example memory, focus. Other aspects to differentiate between drug sensation and drug thought interactions, measurable outcomes, common trial focus challenges, and instrumentation. Component focus example components, as here table on key components of monitoring, we have sensory data accuracy, cognitive assessment, regulatory compliance, participant challenges, physiological correlation. Table on steps for effective monitoring, step description example, steps we have planning, execution, data review, reporting, risk identification. Table on tools and techniques for monitoring, tool or technique purpose example, tools or techniques, we have sensory evaluation devices, cognitive testing software, patient reported outcome tools, functional imaging, data visualization platforms. Table on real world applications of monitoring trials, sensory cognitive focus outcome trials, we have neuropathy trials, sedative medication, pain management studies, cognitive enhancer study, dementia drug testing. Application table scenario: for each scenario, key principle applied, key actions, timeline, what to watch out for. Scenarios: we have monitoring sensory changes like pain perception in neuropathy drug trials, evaluating cognitive impacts such as memory recall in Alzheimer's medication studies, incorporating vigilance testing for sedative trials to meet regulatory compliance, assessing pain thresholds in migraine drug studies using electronic sensory devices, monitoring reaction times in sleep aid trials using cognitive testing software, tracking subjective sensory effects such as blurred vision during CNS drug trials, using fMRI scans to detect changes in cognitive activity during dementia treatment trials, reporting culture and demographic influences on sensory variability in pain trials, evaluating fatigue consequences in ADHD drug cohorts, testing a new neuropathic pain drug for tactile sensitivity improvements, visualizing improvements in attention span using neuroimaging during CNS drug trials, monitoring cognitive delays in sleep deprived participants during psychotropic trials. And next, we will revise what we have covered through this lecture via some multiple choice questions or MCQs. Question 1: what do drug sensation and drug thought interaction trials primarily investigate? A, the impact of environmental stressors on blood composition. B, how medications influence sensory perceptions and cognitive processes. C, the role of genetics in drug response variability. Or D, the long-term stability for drug formulations. So the answer would be B, as B is the most accurate, correct answer within the four options. How medications influence sensory perceptions and cognitive processes, as these trials Focus on understanding how drugs affect sensory experiences, as for example, pain, vision, and cognitive functions, for example, memory, judgment, particularly for CNS, central nervous system, targeting medications. What is the main challenge in tracking sensory data during trials? A, maintaining consistent recruitment timelines. B, standardizing sensory testing across populations with variable baseline responses. C, ensuring complete avoidance of adverse events. Or D, implementing protocol updates for every individual participant. So it is B, as standardizing sensory testing across populations with variable baseline responses, as sensory data accuracy requires standardized methods like calibrated tools and procedures to ensure consistency, especially given the variability in baseline sensory responses across diverse populations. Question 3, why is cognitive assessment consistency uh, important in these trials? A, to assess only the most severe side effects of CNS drugs. B, to reduce the time required for regulatory approval. C, to ensure reproducible and objective interpretation of cognitive impacts. Or D, to avoid using complex neuropsychological tools. So the most correct answer would be the C, to ensure reproducible and objective interpretation of cognitive impacts, as reproducible and objective assessments are necessary to accurately evaluate cognitive effects, especially using standardized tests such as MMSE, mini mental state examination, or cognitive testing software. Question 4, which tool is most effective for detecting drug induced changes in brain activity? A, digital cognitive diaries. B, functional magnetic resonance, functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI. C, blood pressure monitors. Or D, visual analog scales, VAS. B would be the most accurate correct answer, fMRI, as fMRI is an advanced tool used to map brain activity changes, helping link drug effects to alterations in sensory or cognitive functions. Question 5, how can regulatory compliance be ensured in trials involving cognitive and sensory impacts? A, by conducting trials only in high risk populations. B, by using pre specified and standardized endpoints for sensory cognitive assessments. C, by avoiding the use of advanced imaging tools. Or D, by reducing the scope of trial safety reporting. So the most accurate, reasonable answer would be B, in between the four choices, as by using pre-specified and standardized endpoints for sensory or cognitive assessments, as regulatory bodies require the use of validated standardized or standardized endpoints to ensure that cognitive and sensory side effects are measured reliably and ethically. And here we come to end of this lecture. Thank you very much and goodbye.